put this in perspective, how big a help will this be? We know that it's going to be temporary at least.
Well, it is temporary, but it is coming in as a big relief because of many reasons. Remember, this program, the previous program, in fact, was ending on the 30th of June, that is today. And the country is in the midst of Eid festivities, making Pakistan really the third nation in South Asia to be able to get funds from the IMF to see through their economic situation and stabilize their economy. So the standby facility of $3 billion really comes in at a good time, and these funds will be very, very important. While yes, this is a standby facility to make sure that the country is able to transition through a brief period in the next 9 months or so when the elections take place in the country, it is important because this will make sure that the country is able to bolster their foreign reserves, they are able to stabilize their economy, and most importantly, avoid any sovereign default, which had become a big cause of concern for Pakistan. In fact, the IMF today has said that Pakistan now needs to make sure that they're able to see through some of the reforms that they had promised in this year's budget. Remember, Pakistan's authorities have hiked taxes, they have hiked energy prices, they've devalued their currency, but it is imperative on them to make sure that they're able to see through on some of these reforms, because it's not just about 9 months. There are massive debt obligations that lie ahead for the country in the next year or so, and Pakistan has to make sure that they're able to build on these funds that come in from the IMF.
Ruchi, but aren't they just borrowing from Peter to pay Paul, because they've got to meet serious debt payment obligations coming up?
Oh, absolutely right, Rishad. In fact, that's exactly what I said. If you look at Pakistan's foreign exchange reserves, they have slid almost 60% in the last 12 months at about $3.5 billion. And the country's debt obligations are huge, are close to $23 billion for the next for the next year or so. So Pakistan has to make sure that, as I said, they're able to build on some of these funds that have come in from the IMF. In fact, it is also important and needs to be seen how Pakistan is able to convince some of the friendly countries like China, like Saudi Arabia, to make sure that more funds are pumped into the economy. And also, on top of it, they have to make sure that revenue mobilization efforts are underway, and the country, in fact, avoids any possibility of in fact increasing their energy prices. So all those temptations have to be avoided.